right, so in a previous session, I was working on the car here. We were evaluating the fuel injection and the fuel pump. Anyway, I was working back here, and I noticed some of the dust and the soot on here had a a metallic feel to it, like there was metal shavings in there. So I started looking around for what could possibly, cause metal shavings. This is not loose. This is not loose. But just on a whim, I took and tightened the belt like this. I don't know if you can see the bearings on my generator are shot. Well, the generator here, or alternator, depending on which year you have, this bearing also supports the fan and the fan shroud in the back. And so when this bearing goes out, aside from wobbling, it also makes that fan wobble. And that fan, I believe, has been deteriorating and blowing metal shavings through the engine compartment here. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull this off. It means all this has to come off. All the top end stuff has to come off. I have to take off the hood and all of the springs and the mounting material for the trunk lid. And so it's going to be quite a task. But we're going to pull this off and have a look at those bearings and see if this unit itself needs to be replaced or if it can be serviced. At the very least, we're going to have to take all of that cooling shroud off and have a look at the fan. So quite a big task ahead. So here you can see how badly crimped that hose was. Just as well you take these things apart from time to time to find these little issues. Now, this is just for letting fumes out, so probably not that big a deal, but to be completely crimped off like that, it's pretty bad. All right, moving on. So you can see how these mounts work. It has like a little spacer here. And it allows for some movement back and forth this way. And also side to side this way. And this little deal goes in right there with the bolts, you know, underneath like that. We're going to clean this up real nice. There's got a little bit of rust on here. Maybe we'll give it another coat of paint. All right, so for this next part here, we're going to take the battery out. Actually disconnect the battery because we're going to pull the major charging cable. This is a positive cable right here. It goes right to the battery. We're also going to start taking apart all of these connectors. Now, with these connectors, you have to be very careful with them. They're probably old and brittle, but the thing that you'll notice in here is there's a spring. See this metal spring right here? If you get on one side, you can get a flat, like a small flat screwdriver, something like this, in there. You can pull that spring. See that? And that will relieve that so that you can pull that out. So you don't want to force those. You just want to pop that spring so that it makes it easier for those to come out. We've got a number of those to pull out. We're going to take all the electric out and we're going to stuff it behind until we're ready to reinstall those. But we want to get them out of the way, and we want to make sure nothing's going to get damaged when we start moving the larger components out. So I'm going to go ahead and take the battery off, and then we'll start pulling these wires out. All right, so we got the majority of these wires all loosened up. We're going to loosen this one up in a minute. This bundle right here goes through a major wire management bundle here, and then right behind here, right on this fan shroud, there's a little piece of wire management that's connected with a Phillips screwdriver. And there's really no way that you can get a Phillips screwdriver in there unless you have a stubby. So if you don't already have a stubby, you may want to use a ratchet with a driver bit or some other creative method to get in there to loosen that screwdriver. Loosen that screw, but this is what I'm going to use. All right, there you go, nice and loose. Here you can see the screw that's holding that in there. All right, so this is the messy part. You can see right across here, we got a fuel rail or a fuel line. This goes between the fuel injectors, which they split off at the ends right here, and you can disconnect those. And this right here is the cold start injector right here. So you can disconnect this right here or right here, but this whole piece right here needs to come off in order to pull this shroud out. So it's going to get a little messy. So what you need to do is you don't have to worry about the fuel line coming from the front. It comes off over here, and this where this T is. This is where the fuel supply line is right here. But if you take these off, it's going to dribble the fuel that's in here. So it's going to make a little bit of a mess. So let's go ahead and take this thing off and make this thing accessible. We'll have to then take off this bolt right here, remove the fan belt here, and I think we've already loosened we've removed the coil. Oh, the throttle cable. That's kind of important. The throttle cable passes through, so you'll have to take the throttle cable off, fish it back. There's a sleeve that goes in between. So if you pull the sleeve out, you'll be able to push the cable forward, and you'll be able to get that out with no problem. So let's go ahead and move on. All right, so I've got all the peripheral hoses all disconnected. I've got the wiring pushed back. I've got the fuel line disconnected. Really wasn't all that messy. It did make a little bit of a spurt, got all over my hands, but it wasn't like it was flowing out like fuel, like when you do the fuel pump. That's a mess. But this is the part that I dread the worst. There are two little screws that hold the bottom of the fan shroud down on its skirts. They're at the base, and they slide into a little slot, and there's like a little screw at the end, and they're right behind these air tubes that from the intake manifold. They're right behind there. They're small little screws, and you have to do them with a hand wrench, and you have to do it blind just by braille. But we're not going to take the whole thing out. We're just going to loosen it to make it easier for this to come off. But regardless, those screws need to come out, and they are the hardest thing in the whole project. So I'm not going to record my frustration. You can just appreciate how difficult it is to do those when you get them on your own. Once we get to that, we'll be able to slide this thing up, pull the 4 bolts off of this, and then we'll be able to remove this generator. So to give you some reference, here's where the bolt is. Right there. I believe it's a 10 millimeter, but you just need to take that off, and try not to lose it in the bottom of the engine when you get there. But that's the hard one. See, it's right behind the intake manifold right here, and it holds the bottom edge of that flange shroud around. There's one on both sides. All right, so to take the pulley off, it's real obvious. You're going to take this nut off, right? But in order to keep that from spinning, I've already loosened it so it moves. You can see there's a slot right here. And what you're intended to do is to take a large flat screwdriver and put it in that slot. Now if you look inside that slot, as you move the pulley along, you'll see there's a stud right there. See that little knobby thing? So when you get your screwdriver in there, you want to engage that so that it hits, your screwdriver's in the notch, and then it hits that little stud right in there, and that'll keep the pulley from turning while you're loosening this nut. Now, if you've had a Volkswagen for very long and you ever adjusted your belts, you already know this, but this just for general knowledge. Okay, so at this point, I've taken the 13 millimeter screw or bolt nut off of this side of the strap. This strap has another nut, you can barely see, right down there, which means that this entire throttle body assembly needs to come off so we can gain access to that. For the throttle body to come off, it means that you need to also remove the EGR and I think the stack might be able to stay because you can disconnect it right here. But we're going to have to take off the throttle body, and that means that these two nuts, one on this side, one on the other side, are going to have to come off. And we're going to have to disconnect the throttle linkage, which we knew we were going to have to do anyway. But that's the step that we're at right now. All right, so there you go. Got the throttle body all disconnected. Here it is sitting right here. Be a good opportunity for me to clean this baby up. Look how nasty that is in there. Got it's actually got some like a skin on it. So we'll clean that out with some carb cleaner. Give this a good cleanup before we get it all back together again. It's a good opportunity for us to clean this whole area up. So there's our bolt. We're gonna get that bolt out before we can progress and go ahead and pull this generator. I think we're at the point now where everything should be loose. And there you have it. Fan shroud removed. Now here's the oil cooler. This is the one thing that you really want to be careful for when you're pulling the fan shroud out. You don't want to pull the shroud out. You want to lift it up as high as you can. And when you get to the point where it's touching the top up here, you want to tip it forward but still keep the back in there, and it will come forward. The idea is that you don't want to mess with the oil cooler too much. You don't want to tip it over or put any weight on it left or right. And so some pitfalls here that I had issues with. You see right here, here's the throttle cable. You don't want to pinch that off, but at the same point, there's a connection where the sleeves meet right there, and it's hard to get that to meet back up. And once you get it disconnected, it's even harder to get it to retract. So that was a pitfall that I had on that. Another one is on the back of the fan shroud, there's this emissions pipe. That emissions pipe goes into the rear fender, where, let me watch your head here, I don't want you to get dizzy. You can see there's a whole nother emissions control right up in there. I don't even know what that does, but that was an issue. I didn't see that pipe when we were first pulling that out. I did have to move two of the spark plug wires out because they were fished in between here. I didn't want to pinch them. And you'll notice I still have the fuel injectors still connected on the ends, but I did have to remove all the wire management and stuff. And I was going to have all these wires in the back, but I decided that it was easier to have them in the front. So once I got it loose, I was able to pull those wires to the front, and then they weren't in the way anymore. So next thing we're going to look at here, we're going to pull this thing off and have a look at the damage inside to see what parts that we need to have replaced. So let's get to the disassembly. All right, so with the 4 bolts off, I was able to pull the generator and the fan out. It seems like it moves pretty smooth, right? Well, the problem is it's rubbing. Look at that. That's some really, really bad wear right there. And that should not happen. So we got a bearing out at the bottom down here. That should not be the case. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this big old bolt off right here. It looks like the fan itself is going to be okay. It's not worn all the way through, but there's certainly some wear. We're going to have a look at the bearings on this and see if there's something that could be serviceable, or if I just have to replace the generator altogether. So let's get this massive bolt off. I imagine I got a size that'll fit that. I got some weird nuts and bolts or wrenches, so we'll see if I can get this one off. I'll tell you what size that is in case you're of a mind to do that yourself. All right. Hey, props to the folks over at AutoZone for their tool rental program. I was able to rent this Impact 36 millimeter impact socket to get this baby off. Came right off, no arguments. Didn't even have to put it in the vise or anything. The impact wrench did its thing. So there you go. When you're taking this thing apart, keep in mind that just like the front end, where you have the shims for your pulley, this thing has shims as well. When you see shims on the inside, that is for actually shimming, right? And when you see shims on the outside, those are extra shims. So they give you a whole assortment of shims should you later need to put some new shims on there. But anyway, a couple of more bolts here and we'll have this plate off, and we'll be able to have a look. Have a look at this, at the play in this bearing. That is amazing that the car was even running. I imagine that this whole generator is shot. That much play probably means that it's the magnets are touching. All right, so quick summary. We had a problem with the, actually detected some dust. Right here, look, the magnetite. This is the magnets from inside. That's what the powder was. It wasn't metal. It was actually the magnets, the permanent magnets. So yeah, this thing is shot. You can see the crystals in there. It's completely shot. And the rear bearing on the back is what went out. And so it required us to take out the generator. Well, if you look at the generator, it's like, oh, boom, right in the middle of everything. So we had to move everything. And so we took all the electrical out, removed disconnected the battery before we did that. Took out the fan shroud. We had to remove the trunk lid and the arms for the trunk, or the hood. Anyway, so that's a quick review. When we get the new parts in, then we'll go ahead and do the installation and do another video on that. So make sure you subscribe and check back when we get those new parts. That's all I have for today. Cheers.